Hello and welcome in, friends, to the Mercado Top 10 list. I am Mike Mercado, and I want to thank you guys so much for joining us here in the very first episode. We've made it, guys. It is our home base, the home studio set up. The lovely lady is in the other room with the crazy dog, and we're going to have ourselves an awesome adventure, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And on today's show, we're doing two Top 10 lists. To kick it started, it's the first episode. You guys are joining us on this journey, and we thought it no better time to do it than right now. One of the lists, top superhero movies, and the next one, top 90s cartoons. It's going to be some interesting conversation, guys, and that is what this show is all about. It's about conversations between all of us. What are our favorite things? What do we love eating, watching? What are our favorite movies, books, so on and so forth? The Top 10 List show is for all of us together. It's for all of us to have this conversation and be a community. The Mercado Top 10 List, it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. And hopefully, I'm not the only Mercado here on the show. Hopefully, you guys get to hear some of the other ones, the two other brothers who have a lot of opinions, and I don't like all the time, so it should make for a pretty good podcast. I hope you guys stick around to listen to all of them. You can follow me everywhere in the universe. I'm on Twitter at mmercado2333. Subscribe to us at YouTube. Go to Mike Mercado2333. We're the first page you see. Click on us, subscribe to us, and you can see cool interviews and all the stuff we do on Outreach Radio Chicago on WSBC 1240 AM Chicago, 10 p.m. on Thursdays. And while you're doing it, go to Facebook and like Outreach Radio Chicago. We really need the support, guys. It really means a lot to us. It's a big passion of mine where we help out the community. We do stories that we feel the community needs to hear about. So if you know anything or of anything or anybody who does projects like that, please check out the show and get to us, guys. It's really cool stuff. But like I said, here on the Mercado Top 10 list, it's fun. It's a fun time, and we're just going to enjoy ourselves. And that's what a lot of these projects are going to be. There's a lot of passion projects that we're working on here, and hopefully they're going to start coming out to you guys very soon. And hopefully you guys enjoy and listen to them and give us your feedback. Now let's get to the first list. All right, guys, it is time to get into a top 10 list that is definitely going to get people talking, and that is the Mercado Top 10 list of 90s cartoons. It was a great time to be alive, guys. I was born in 1990, and I got to experience a lot of these on their high mark, and obviously anybody who watches Netflix right now, a lot of these have been on, and one of them that happens to be on my list is hot on Netflix right now, and it just got me thinking about, man, what a great time it was for these cartoons. And, admittedly, I don't get a lot of these cartoons nowadays. I don't personally get Gumball and Adventure Time and any of things, but that's not my demographic. So I decided to talk about my demographic and what I love. So let's start with the list. Don't forget, you could comment and give us your top 10 list. What are your favorite 90s cartoons? I'm on Twitter at mmercado2333. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Mike Mercado2333, and let us know exactly what you think is your top 10 list of 90s cartoons. And don't forget to stick tuned to later on the show where we talk about top 10 superhero movies. Another one that's going to get people talking. So right off the bat, at number 10, we have the Powerpuff Girls. Who would have thought, huh? An early to mid-90s superhero show, of all things, about three sisters. And that's one thing that you'll see on the show a lot is I'm very much a supporter, and I love things that have to deal with siblings. I always love the sibling dynamic and storytelling and whatnot. But the Powerpuff Girls was not only something, boys would enjoy, but the fact that it was aimed at girls, and it gave girls something to watch and enjoy and give them that girl power type of mentality in it. And, and it still had some of those tropes of girls being sweet, but then them being kind of little hard asses. And it was a really cool cartoon that was ahead of its time. And I think that's a lot of these things seen in the 90s. And maybe that's cartoons in general, especially when you get older, is you just realize that they're ahead of their time a little bit because you just don't get them. But at number 10, to start off our list, easily Powerpuff Girls cracks the top 10 and starts us off really strong. At number 9, The Angry Beavers, another story about two brother beavers. And this one I really enjoyed because of its nostalgia towards monster movies, the 70s, the 80s. Again, it was really smart humor. You know, of course, it had its potty humor, but it was something that the parents can watch too, because there was a lot of little nods and tie-ins to, or Easter eggs of things that they would have watched. So I always thought the Angry Beavers, and especially again as you get older and you watch them again, Angry Beavers was like another show ahead of its time, very clever on all the jokes it would do. But to me, coming in at number 8 was a show that was just clever in general, and that was Doug. Doug was another coming-of-age type of story that even at a young age you could relate to, like a kid not truly understanding, liking these girls and how to approach them and dealing with bullies and driving and all these different things, and even being in the mid to late 90s, it was something anybody could relate to at that time, and it was also a simple time. If you really look at that cartoon compared to coming-of-age stories now, it's so much more simpler back then. And it goes to show the way the world was back when Doug came out. So coming in at number 8, I have Doug, one of the all-time classic shows. And number 7, just alone with this theme song, is a top 10 cartoon, and that is the X-Men animated series. One of the best adaptations of comic to cartoons, at least in my opinion. They kept to their colorful ways and costumes. And the theme song. That theme song, phenomenal, all-time theme song. So X-Men coming in at number 7. Speaking of theme songs and strong, detailed, and just amazing coloring in its own way, Gargoyles. I mean, Gargoyles, such a gothic, dark show, but, just I remember sitting there and Goliath speaking, and he would just take over the television in the room. It was just awesome, and that's a show that I'm surprised hasn't made a comeback. And maybe it's the concept wouldn't work for this generation, but Gargoyles was such an underrated show to me, and it comes in at number 6, almost cracking the top 5. But to me, this top 5 is very, very strong. Coming in at number 5 is a show to me for kids broke the mold of what is acceptable humor, and that is Ren and Stimpy. Now, Ren and Stimpy almost didn't make this list and was going to make another future top 10 list that we're going to do, but I decided to put in there because at the end of the day, Ren and Stimpy never quite had that political satire as much as some of the other shows on the adult cartoons that we're going to do later on, but Ren and Stimpy was very much ahead of its time. Without Ren and Stimpy, you don't get Rocko's Modern Life or Real Monsters or any of these kablams or those type of shows that were the crude humor and had that weird, animation to it. And it was kind of creepy and unsettling, but really funny. And Ren and Stimpy, again, really much ahead of its time. And number 4, I have the Animaniacs. Now, the Animaniacs, again, a show that was for both parents and kids. You had produced by Steven Spielberg, so you had so many tie-ins to the real world, so many things that were satire of what was going on in the world then. And on top of that, Hollywood, and it was meta on its own right. And Animaniacs, a very smart show for kids, and it had so many funny spin-offs. Pinky and the Brain, the Goodfellas, the Pigeons. Every little mini cartoon that they had was a hit for that time. It was the kid version of SNL and Mad TV. It was different skits. It was a new age, better example, new age Looney Tunes. They were getting different cartoons, different characters for us at that time, and I feel like the Animaniacs completely hit for both adults and kids. So that one, Animaniacs coming in at number 4. But at number 3 is something that has taken over the world right now, and that is Pokemon. It was everywhere. Video games, cards, and that cartoon. Every morning, not every Saturday, every morning, and the new episodes on Saturday. Or was it Sunday? I forgot. But either way, every new episode on the weekend. But during the week, waking up, eating my breakfast before I would go to school, watching episode after episode after episode of Pokemon. That show was everything for years. Your grandmother knows Pikachu. That's the end of that conversation. Now the top two. This one I feel is two polar opposite shows, but so endearing in my heart. And this one's really hard for me to. It was really hard for me to make because I feel like coming out with what was my number one, people are gonna call me a fanboy for it, but I don't apologize for it. So coming in at number two, the Rugrats. Again, another show that is completely family friendly in the sense it has so much adult humor in there that the kids would not understand, and it has so much humor just for kids. And again, it's family orientated. It's about family growing together and appreciating each other and just living life. And you see some of the things that would go on and some of the stereotypes that families have. And Rugrats, again, just so smart and something that just captivated this world. Had its own movie just like Pokemon. A lot of these cartoons were able to go beyond just 0 to 8-year-olds and become mainstream pop culture type of stuff. And Rugrats is no better example than that. You had Rugrats on Ice, video games, movies, spin-off TV shows. And go back to it now. Go back to Rugrats right now. I bet you find it more cute and endearing because now you get everything that the show talks about. And a lot of you are having your own family and kids. So you'll get a kick. Go back and listen to or watch the Rugrats. I guarantee you'll fall in love with it all over again. But to me, the number one cartoon of the 90s, as close as it was for the Rugrats, it definitely became a no-brainer, and that's the Batman the Animated Series. What else can we talk about? The directing, the voice acting, the coloring, the maturity, I'm speechless at how perfect that show is. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, to this day, are still playing Batman and Joker in different video games and medias in all different types of walks of life. They're still doing it. That Batman reestablished what Batman was to pop culture because it's coming off the heels of the 1989 Batman, so Tim Burton's Batman. So it was introducing a different type of Batman to a whole new generation of viewers, of kids, aka me, us, all the 90s kids. And it was mature. It was fun. It was smart. You haven't seen a Batman show since. It's still the gold standard for those type of television shows. So go watch the Mr. Freeze episode. How about that? Go watch the first ever Mr. Freeze episode of the Batman animated series. Come back to me and tell me if you disagree with me then, if that is not the best animated 90s cartoon of all time. Go ahead. I'll wait. But that was the Mercado Top 10 90s cartoon list. We'll run it down one last time, guys. At number 10, Powerpuff Girls. At number 9, Angry Beavers. At 8, Doug. At 7, X-Men. 6, Gargoyles. 5, Ren and Stimpy. 4, Animaniacs. 3, Pokemon. 2, Rugrats. And at number 1, Batman the Animated Series. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to this Top 10 list. Coming up, we have the Superhero Top 10 list. We want to know what you guys thought about this one, though. Let us know on the comment section. And while you're there, subscribe to us at Mike Mercado2333. Go to Twitter and follow me at mmercado2333 and see what we have coming up in future episodes and other cool things that we are working on. And also support the Outreach Radio show that we are doing. Just go to Facebook and like our page at Outreach Radio Chicago. Thank you, guys, and stay tuned. We have more on the Mercado Top 10 list. Comic-Con just ended last week, and of course we saw all the big news from the trailers of Doctor Strange, from the Defenders, Luke Cage. We saw things for the new DC lineup of Wonder Woman and the Justice League and Suicide Squad, and of course it's one of the more popular subjects on the internet today. It's superhero films. Well, if anybody who knows me, especially if you could, one of these days I'll bring in a webcam and you can see the actual Batcave here, but I'm a huge superhero nerd. So on top of that, I love movies. It's another very big passion of mine. superhero movies. We're ranking them from top to bottom. We made a list out right here. So let's get it started. The first two are big classics that everybody likes. I wasn't born when these movies came out, but growing up, they've been installed into my daily lexicon and daily life. Luckily I had a cool family that used to show me cool movies like that. So starting off at number 10, it's a toss-up. It was between the first one and the second one, but it is the 1970s Superman movie. I went with Superman 2. To me, growing up, at least, it was more interesting to have General Zod and the Kryptonians versus Clark Kent on top of having Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor in there. So, and you got the best of Christopher Reeve's Superman. So I put Superman 2 as my number 10. My number 9, the 1989 Batman movie. For the longest time, this was the gold standard for superhero movies. It was the gold standard for any type of genre film like that. Tim Burton did a masterful job. Michael Keaton as Batman, and obviously Jack Nicholson as the Joker. A phenomenal movie. It's to this day, it really even to this day with movies like, let's say like a Batman Begins, it really has still stood the test of time. Over 25 years. And it was artful and still very gothic. The color on it was amazing. The acting and performances. Obviously, Jack as the Joker was an all-time classic villain and character of all time. So, I have no doubt that it was on my top list. And this is when we're going to start getting a little controversial. So I really want to know what you guys think. My number 8 film in this list, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, mind you, when this movie came out, it was before Star Wars Episode 7, so we haven't had a space odyssey like we have since, right? That movie filled that niche, that genre. On top of it, it was characters that were very lovable, and we saw the birth of a brand new star in Chris Pratt. And on top of all that, it was Marvel heading into the cosmic part of their storytelling, which opens up the realm to things that we're seeing right now with Thor Ragnarok and coming up with the Infinity Wars. So to me, I think it was a no-brainer to put Guardians up on that one. And number 7, I have The Incredibles. Now, I can see a lot of people wondering, at least disagreeing that it should be on this list because it's a cartoon and it's a kids movie and so on and so forth. First of all, these are all kids movies at some point, at some core, something like that. Like they all go to our kid nature in us. They could be fantastic films. That's besides the point. The Incredibles is an amazing Fantastic Four movie if you really want to put it down to it. It's about family. It's about sticking together. It's about growing together. It's about overcoming adversity with each other. And it has a strong villain. To me, it's a strong villain. It's somebody who looked up to these characters who didn't have that type of ability. That's all they wanted to be, and they created their own way. And it kind of is a meta way of looking at ourselves, of trying to better ourselves and do it for the wrong reasons, for the glamour and so on and so forth. But The Incredibles, an incredible movie, pardon the pun. But on top of that, the fact that the sequel is going to come out in a few years, it's a little overdue, but I think The Incredibles, hands down, one of the greatest superhero movies ever, on top of cartoon, family, whatever you want to put. You're going to see it on a lot of lists that we do here on the Mercado Top Tens. And at number 6, it was a toss-up between part 1 and part 2, another one of these, and I think at the end, it was easy. The decision became easy when I think about growing into itself. From a part 1 to a part 2, this movie grew into itself so much, and that's Spider-Man 2 of the original trilogy. Alfred Molina as Dr. Octavius, that's the movie. When we talk about villains and actors becoming these characters, he found a way to make you love, feel sympathy, hate, and root for redemption in one character. And that was the movie that kind of culminated what we thought at the time was the pinnacle of what a superhero movie could be. And to me, that cannot lose its place when we talk about top superhero films. I can understand why people love Spider-Man 1 because it was the first one, and you had William Dafoe as the Green Goblin, but I think part 2 just kind of had a little bit of everything, even from Harry Franco, James Franco playing the Osborn son. So yeah, definitely Spider-Man 2, especially in the 5 movies, not including what we're going to see in Spider-Man Homecoming in a few years. Spider-Man 2, number 6 of my top 10 superhero films. And now we get to the top 5. This is the one that I cannot wait to see what you guys say down in the comment section or on Twitter at mmercado2333, on the YouTube page, Mike Mercado2333. Rounding up the top 5 at number 5 is Deadpool. Number 5 and number 4 are really hard for me. The only reason I have Deadpool on number 5 is simply because it came out, earlier than it. So my high of Deadpool isn't as, and we're talking about like a fingernail difference, but it's the funniest superhero movie ever made. That's a conversation. It's the funniest superhero movie ever made. At number 4, I have Captain America: Civil War. This one was hard between a 2 and a 3 now. I thought for the longest time Winter Soldier was going to be the best single-storied Marvel movie. And then Civil War came out. And it was, a lot of people wanted to call it Avengers 2.5, which, yes, of course, there's elements because there's a bunch of different superheroes coming in and out. And at the end of the day, it was still a Captain America movie. The story still focused on Captain America. There were different forces being pushed back and forth between Iron Man's story and Black Panther's story and everything. They were still intertwined within it. But the straight line was Captain America. And Winter Soldier is phenomenal. But the fact that Civil War was able to put that story and wrap it up, on top of bringing in a new story that's going to affect the future films that are even bigger scale, to me, puts it right there on this list. At number 3, it was another tough competition between movies separated by years and by different films and directors, and that is X-Men Days of Future Past over X2, and that is coming in at number 3. It is one of those movies that brought me in to a series. That's the reason why I have it so high. I've never been a huge X-Men the movie fans. I love them because they're superhero films. I love the old animated cartoons. But I was always a Spider-Man guy, and there was also, different things coming out. Blade. I had different interests. Like, X-Men were cool, but I never quite clicked with them. But I always watched the movies. X-Men Days of Future Past was the first one to completely enthrall me in all the aspects that movies should. Or at least good genre films, superhero films, whatever you want to classify these things as. That's what Days of Future Past did. The story to me was well-rounded. Even though in an outside perspective, the timelines never ever add up. But in that movie, all the rules make sense that they put in that universe. From the beginning scene, spoiler alerts of all the deaths you see of your X-Men, to Wolverine going to the past, to the way the 70s look, to Magneto's interaction with Charles, and just thinking about watching Apocalypse, and now it's such a disappointment. But definitely Days of Future Past in my top 3. And now is the ultimate argument, right? Number 1 versus number 2. And I'm pretty confident if you guys are listening to this, or if you guys have any interest in superhero films, you have an idea of what 1 or 2 are. So to me, it really is 1A and 1B, whatever kind of way you want to justify it to make it that they're both on the same level. But since I am ranking them, at number 2, I have the Avengers. At number 1, I have the Dark Knight. To me, they're almost perfect movies in so many different ways. The Avengers is such a fun, fast-paced, you thought you'd never see a type of movie, opposed to The Dark Knight, which is more of a grounded in reality retelling of a movie we saw before. It has that aspect to it, that we were expecting one thing with it even after watching Batman Begins, and we got something completely different with Heath Ledger's The Joker. And Christian Bale's Batman was on point at that point of the series as well. He had already become his own Bruce Wayne. He had his own identity as Batman after Batman Begins had came out a few years earlier. Christopher Nolan completely at his peak right now, starting at that point with his directing skills, and you got to give credit to Joss Whedon, what he did with assembling so many actors and personalities and characters and finding a way to make the Avengers such a epic, awe-inspiring movie. I mean, the scene where they're all in the circle in New York City, I mean, it gives you chills. It gives me chills to this moment right now. But the difference between the Avengers and Dark Knight, the reason why Dark Knight is 1 to me and Avengers is 2, an Oscar for Heath Ledger. The only movie in those two that had an Academy Award performance was by Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. And that to me is the biggest difference. But it's another example of two movies being great for two different reasons and people seeing it in so many different ways and taking so many things away from it. And it's one of the beautiful things about movies and about having these conversations, and that's exactly what we're doing here on the Mercado Top 10. I just gave you my top 10 superhero films. I want to know exactly what you guys thought. What you guys think are your top 10s? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What should I put on? What shouldn't I put on? Be kind on the comment section, guys. We're civil. Don't be animals, okay? I don't have to disagree. Don't tell me to kill myself and jump off of, the Empire State Building. I'm not King Kong. I'm not doing that, okay? So please let me know what you guys think. Follow me on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like the page on Facebook at Outreach Radio Chicago if you want to support what I'm doing on WSBC 1240 AM Chicago Thursday nights at 10 p.m. And, of course, subscribe to me on YouTube /MikeMercado2333. And you can see other episodes that are coming up of the Mercado Top 10 podcast and some other cool stuff that we are working on. One last time, we're running it down at number 10, Superman 2. Number 9, Batman from 1989. And number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. At number 7, The Incredibles. At number 6, Spider-Man. Top 5, starting with Deadpool at 5. Civil War at 4. X-Men, Days of Future Past at 3. The Avengers at 2. And my number 1 superhero movie of all time here on the Mercado Top 10 podcast, The Dark Knight. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the very first episode. I hope you guys are going to stick with us on this very cool ride. We have some cool stuff coming. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.